2 voting systems, 2 arguments, 2 campaigns, 1 referendum. Ladies and gentlemen, live from the Emmanuel Centre, Westminster, the Young Citizens Say Referendum 2011 debate. Now, please welcome your host from Sky News, Dermot Murnaghan.
Well, there we go. Welcome everyone to the great AV debate. And I think after that X Factor type introduction, it's rather appropriate you have a host called Dermot here, isn't it? You know, maybe not O'Leary, but hey. Not all too bad. Right, the AV debate, we want to get on with it because time is running tight for us. We've got a very, very distinguished panel here for us. Let me introduce them all to you. First of all, we have here with us Ben Bradshaw MP. Ben is, of course, lead campaigner for Labour for the Yes to AV campaign, Labour MP for Exeter. Since 1997 has been Secretary of State, you'll remember, for Culture, Olympics, Media and Sport. Also on Ben's team, Katie Ghose, Public Affairs Specialist and Barrister, Chair of the Yes to Fairer Votes campaign and Chief Executive of the Electoral Reform Society. And they're joined, these are all on my left, your right, Elliot Folan, and Elliot's campaigner for a change to AV since May 2010, student obviously, and a Green Party activist. Ben, along with some fellow campaigners, has helped both the North London and Barnet Yes to AV groups. So there we have representing the Yes team. On the No side, we have Mr. David Blunkett MP. Really needs no introduction, does he? A number of jobs he's held on the front bench, including, of course, Home Secretary. Well, he's campaigning. He's a patron of the No to AV campaign. Charlotte Vere, in the middle there, is Finance Director of the No to AV campaign, social entrepreneur and award-winning businesswoman. Charlotte is passionate about the environment and was a campaigner for Zach Goldsmith, who's now, of course, an MP. And last but not least, on the No team, and indeed on the panel, Dominic Moffitt, here immediately beside me, campaigning against AV. Dominic joined the Labour Party in 2008. In 2009, he stood in Tewkesbury for Gloucestershire County Council. He's also worked as a ward organiser for Islington South alongside campaigning in the 2010 general election for Emily Thornbury MP. Please welcome our panellists. Now, as I say, we're going to crack on almost straight away, but before we start, I just want to test the water because we're going to have a vote at the end of this debate to see if minds have been swayed one way or the other. I just want to see if anyone's already made up their mind, because you showed in the vote before, just before this debate started, after you'd seen the VT explaining AV, that a lot of you understood it. Who's in favour of it, though? Here's the proposition. Do you want to see an AV, an alternative vote system, brought in the United Kingdom? Yes or no, please vote now. Okay, well, I would say that it's fairly, there's more no's on this side, more yeses on this side, fairly evenly split. I'm not sure if the yeses on this side outdo the no's on that side, but it's getting pretty close. So there's a lot to play for our panellists. So if we could please, could we have our first question? And that's going to be you, Terry. We're going to kick off with your question. Would you care to read it out for us, Terry? Oh, sorry, you've got the microphone, okay, yeah. Should be turned on. Just try again. There we go.
Is this just a scheme for the Liberal Democrats to gain easier entry into power?
Okay, right, okay. Well, straight to the heart of it. Is this just a scheme for the Lib Dems to gain an easier entry into power? Well, let's start with the no's. Do they smell a rat here? David Blunkett.
Well, it's actually worse than that, and it can't get much worse than that. Because it actually defrauds the electorate, because those who want the two mainstream parties get disadvantaged by the fact that those who vote for minor parties get 2 or even 3 votes, whereas those of us who are in favour of parties who are likely to form the government just get 1 vote. So every vote should count, but it should only count once. So 1 vote, 1 voter, and that way, if the Lib Dems can manage, as they have in 57 seats in Britain, to persuade the electorate to elect them, then that's fine. But let's not have them in power all the time. whoever's elected to lead the government, because they're always there at the shoulder, forming a coalition, making our lives a misery.
So, Mr. Blunkett, just to clear, the short answer then is yes, it is a scheme in your book for the Lib Dems.
Yes, it is, and it's worse.
Okay, well, let's set the Labour Party against each other. Ben Bradshaw.
No, it's not, and if it was, I wouldn't support it. I mean, it's true that the current first past the post system is very unfair to the Lib Dems, and it's very unfair to smaller parties. That's one of the reasons I support AV, because it's fairer. You have to get more than 50% of the votes you've seen. And it means that those people who live in safe seats, who don't vote for the winning candidate, at the moment their votes never count for anything. At least under AV you have a choice, and you can vote with your heart for the party you really want, and with your head for the party you think's got the best chance of winning. In fact, it's not just the Lib Dems who support this. Many Labour people do, the Greens do, most of the small parties, with the one exception, the BNP. They want to keep first past the post. That is a very good argument in my mind for going for AV.
Okay, we'll stay with the S team, and Katie, I mean, what do you feel then that this is going to favour the smaller parties, and in particular the Lib Dems? It's been cooked up by the coalition.
Well, we've changed. In the 1950s, about 96% of us voted for the two big parties, Labour and the Conservatives. At the last election, that fell to 65%. So the voters have moved on, and I think it's time for the voting system to play catch-up. We should just really simply be able to go into the ballot box and vote for who we want to. And I think the beauty of the alternative vote is you have a choice. You pick a winner. If your winner doesn't make it, you've still got to have your say. This isn't about any one party or politician. It's actually the first time we, the voters, have been given a chance to say, what are the rules you'd like for MPs to get jobs in Parliament? So it's not about a party or a politician. It's really about what's fairer for voters.
I just want to pull you back, because the question was very nuanced, very focused about the Lib Dems. Do you think in the coalition agreements, while they were having those negotiations over the 4 or 5 days before a government was formed, that this was the sop given to the Liberal Democrats?
Well, no, it was actually our manifesto commitment. It was the Labour manifesto commitment.
Well, we know that Gordon Brown was rather a late convert to the whole thing, I think, when he saw the writing was on the wall. But let's not revisit past history. I mean, do you feel that this is something designed to keep the Lib Dems in power?
Well, the Liberal Democrats did make it part of their agreement for the coalition. I mean, that's not a secret. But I think the point about this is we should be able to vote how we want. So it's not about designing a system to keep any one party or politician in power. As voters, we should have a system that reflects our views. That's what it's about.
Okay, Charlotte Vere.
That's a very interesting point. And of course, Nick Clegg had a certain amount of political capital when he went and talked to David Cameron, and he could have done something about tuition fees. He could have done something about raising VAT, and he chose not to. He chose to have a referendum on a system that, to be honest, nobody had particularly heard of, and certainly this time last year, not a single person in the whole country was campaigning for. This is rather problematic.
Well, Ben Bradshaw makes the point it was in the Labour manifesto.
But they weren't campaigning for it. There was no campaign for the alternative vote this time last year. And if you look at the sort of things that Ben Bradshaw, the Electoral Reform Society, was saying about AV, you would feel really rather hoodwinked about it. But can I just turn to one? I just would like to talk through, one seat.
Well, I'm sure we'll be getting on to that in a moment or two.
Will benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, don't lay out your whole stall at once, because we're just focusing here on the issue of the Liberal Democrats. Is this some kind of stitch-up? That's what Terry wants to know. What do you feel about it, Dominic?
Really, it is just a stitch-up. He traded it in the back room, hidden away from everyone. People voted for the Liberal Democrats because they wanted tuition fees to go, they wanted to protect public spending, and he got rid of it for power, because it's the Liberal Democrats that benefit time after time under AV, and the Liberal Democrats put themselves at the centre of politics from here on out with AV. He traded people's sort of aspirations and hopes for political power.
Okay, and my name tag's just dropped off there. Elliot, I mean, given your thoughts about the Lib Dems on some of their policies, surely you wouldn't like to see a voting system that keeps them in government?
I don't think any voting system can save Nick Clegg now. I noticed there were woos at the fact that I'm a Green Party activist. I obviously would have an interest in a voting system that helped smaller parties, but there was an interesting, and it's not necessarily that AV helps smaller parties, but it allows those who want to vote for smaller parties to make their voices heard if they feel dissatisfied. Is this working? With the bigger parties. There was an interesting point where I think David said that to do with votes counting. Every vote doesn't count under first past the post. There are millions, was it millions? Millions and millions of voters in safe seats around the country, 382 safe seats, where no votes count because the MP continues to get in. And that creates a situation where only 1% of the electorate decided the last government. And every vote doesn't count under first past the post. In fact, under first past the post, some people's votes count more than others, and those are the ones in marginal seats.
Okay, right, we've got a lot of hands up there at the back. If we can get the microphone down there, I might, I don't know if your questions are related to that or related to both of you are going to say. Let's see, could you identify yourself and where you're from, please?
My name's Victoria, I'm from St Francis Xavier, South East London. Basically, Ms. Ghose, you said basically that you think that it's time for the electoral system to play catch-up with the people and what people are saying. However, is there really a point in changing to a system that's not that much different from first past the post? And wouldn't it be more cost-effective to do a system that is more proportionate of what people really actually want to vote for?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, if we're going to change the voting system, obviously it depends on the referendum, but why just this limited form of AV? There are much more, which is what you're talking about, there are much more sophisticated forms of proportional representation out there, which really represent people's feelings and give them real choice.
Yeah,
Ben Bradshaw.
I have a great deal of sympathy with what you say. In fact, I'm one of the people who always argue that we should give people a multiple choice question in the referendum, not just restricted to 2 choices. But the fact is, the only choice this government is giving you is a choice between first past the post and AV. So you've got to decide whether you think AV is a bit better or much better. But also, I would say to people, if you want something that goes further than that, you won't get it if we vote to keep the status quo. If we vote to keep the status quo, if we vote to keep first past the post, this unfair and outdated system, then that's it for a generation.
Well, hold on a minute. Then does this mean you see this as the thin end of the wedge? You think you can go further?
No, but there are some people who are, in my view, mistakenly supporting the No campaign who want proportional representation. My message to them is don't make the best the enemy of the good. Just because you want something that's perfect, don't vote against AV, which is better. Well,
I mean, it does seem to, you do seem to think it's the thin end of the wedge. Dominic.
I think you'd all like to know that no country has ever moved from AV to proportional representation. And Nick Clegg has himself said that we shouldn't expect another referendum on this issue. He clearly doesn't think any other change is happening. And we only got one option in this referendum because it benefits him and his party.
Are you one of the people Ben Bradshaw's talking about? I mean, you want to vote no because you want a more sophisticated system. You would think more deeply about PR.
I would certainly like to see the British people given the option to choose PR. If that's what people want, then that's what people should get. But they need to be given an actual choice, not the choice between...
Have we got a split in the No campaign here? Mr Blunkett should...
We certainly have, because this gives the game away. There are people who want fully fledged single transferable vote, which, for those who don't know what it means, is you would no longer have your own Member of Parliament covering your area. There would be multiple constituencies with large numbers of MPs, and you'd tick the list. And you wouldn't be entirely sure who was going to be elected, but more crucially, you wouldn't have a real way of getting rid of those MPs and that government, because under STV there would always be coalitions. And the mess we see, the most vicious and dangerous example of this is Israel, where you can't get a strong government, you can't get a government that lasts, and above all, you can't get a government that can actually make peace with the Palestinians. If you want the worst form of any electoral system, it's what they've got in Israel.
Well, yeah, okay, you can pick out a lot of examples where it has worked as well, though, can't you?
Where?
Germany.
Well, Germany hasn't got a fully fledged STV system.
No, but you're not necessarily talking about that, are you?
Well, you are.
People have the choice to choose the system that they like best.
Okay, well, let's get back to that question. I want to hear from you, Elliot, on this. I mean, do you think we should go for something? We should be asking people if they want something more sophisticated. I mean, you know, this X beside one candidate. At least we can use numbers. You know, we are now numerate. We are literate in this society now.
Yes, we are. As to the question, I agree. I'm a member of the Green Party, and our policy is in favour of a proportional system. What was very interesting, though, is that we have a single MP in Parliament. We put an amendment to the bill for this referendum to have that option referendum to have an option for the single transferable vote, an option for the additional member system. It was voted down in Parliament by the Labour Party, by the Liberal Democrats and by the Conservative Party. This Parliament will not give us a proportional referendum because it damages their own power. That's why we have to make a choice like this, to go for a slightly better system.
And then go for something
well,
like...
If that's necessary, but...
Okay.
That's essentially the point. This Parliament is not going to give us...
A lot of hands coming up at the back. The young lady with I can see a denim sleeve. Let's have you...
Shouldn't elections be about what the people want rather than what party hasn't got the opportunity to be in Parliament? Because if people really want to Liberal Democrats, they will have voters for them. The majority of people have voted for Liberal Democrats. Like in the past, most people have voted for Labour and Labour was in power. So why can't people, if they really want Liberal Democrats, vote for Liberal Democrats instead of change the electoral system? Okay, well, hold on, just to clarify that, because we got the Liberal Democrats in government with the first past the post system. Yeah, but we didn't really vote for them. They signed the coalition. People didn't want them to be in power. Okay, so do you think it would be less representative then with AV? Okay, yeah. Right, nice and clear there. Charlotte.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you know, we know that Vernon Bogdanor, who's a very senior professor of government at Oxford University, has said that there will be more Liberal Democrat MPs under AV. That is absolutely correct. So what is going to happen? You're going to have Nick Clegg, or perhaps his, someone who takes over from Mr. Clegg if he's not popular in the future, deciding who forms our government. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right for our system. I don't think it's right for the people. It's not about the political parties. It's actually about what we want. And a vote for yes, a vote for no is not a vote for status quo. The vote for no is just no to the alternative vote. We're voting, we can look at political reform, we can look at changing the voting system. All we are saying is no to the alternative vote.
Okay, Katie.
A no vote is clearly saying we'd like to keep first past the post. Look, in really simple terms, first past the post is broken. Why? 2/3 of our MPs have a job in Parliament, which is sometimes a job for life, even though most of us didn't vote for them. I think that MPs should get jobs in Parliament. They're very important jobs, so they make decisions about our lives with the majority support of the people. The alternative vote is going to change from the current system to make sure that every single candidate has to aim to get more than 50% of the vote. That means, in practical terms, more time on our doorsteps talking to us about the issues that matter. I felt really frustrated at the last election. You know, where was the debate about tuition fees, climate change, immigration, housing, jobs for young students? It wasn't there. The alternative vote will mean every single candidate will have to spend more time on our doorsteps talking to us about our concerns and less time squabbling with each other.
Okay, well, some might dispute that. Some obviously agreeing. A gentleman there about 3 rows back from you with the microphone, if you could get your hand up there, please.
Hi, Kojo from Park High School in Harrow. I referred to Elliot. I think you mentioned the fact of it being the best, AV being the best measure of the voting system. No, but how far can you say that, though? Because clearly, I mean, if I was voting, of course, in terms of the AV method, I would be tactical on how I vote. So obviously, I wouldn't vote for...
Green Party.
Yeah, but the thing is, right?
Please do.
I wouldn't really vote for a small party because, technically they don't represent the entire population. Of course, the main parties is going to be Conservative and Labour. But the thing is, if I vote for a small party, I'm more likely to lose my vote. So it's like, kind of like just being a floating voter. My vote should not be represented at all. It will be passed on to a proper party like a Labour and Conservative. Okay.
I see. So you don't feel he doesn't feel that AV would empower him as a voter for a smaller party. Yeah. Elliot,
you've given an excellent description of what happens under first past the post, which is that what happens is that people are often forced to choose their second or third choice. And what people want to vote for the Green Party. Lots of people want to vote for the Green Party. What happens in an election where votes count? We get 8.5% of the national vote, and we elect 2 members of the European Parliament. Under the first past the post system, our vote goes to 1%. What happens essentially is this. People say, I'd like to vote for the Green Party, but look, in this seat, they got 500 votes, and the majority is 20,000. There is no point in voting the Green Party because my vote will not count, and I want to keep the Tories out, Labour out, so I'll vote Labour or Tory. And under the alternative vote, people have preferential voting. So you can put 1 by the Green Party, 2 by the Labour Party, or 2 by the Conservative Party, whichever.
Okay.
And it goes to them if
the
Green Party doesn't win.
Listen, do you want to come back quickly on that, just very quickly?
Yeah, but the thing is, then that's not really kind of voting, because in my opinion, I think that's kind of like much more complicated.
Well, sophisticated.
It's just one, 2, 3 in a box rather than a single cross.
But it's easy. But what's easier? Easier is just taking a box next to the person. It's easier than taking
All right,
1, 2,
listen,
3.
you two can have this discussion outside the room when this debate finishes, because that can go on forever.
Count to 1, 2, 3.
Get your hands up if you want to ask a question, and as many of you do, right, so as we can get some sense of you. If you could get the microphone back. She's got the arm there. I'm going to take your question in a minute, but I want to just ask Tricia to put her question, Tricia, because it was something that we had a little spat between Mr. Blunkett and Mr. Bradshaw a little bit earlier on, but this will crystallise it, and we'll go down the panel with this one. Could you put your question, please, Tricia?
Hi. Basically, I just wanted to ask, what makes you think that the AV will work in this country when it's failed already in other countries? Right, OK, here's your chance then, Ben Bradshaw. It's failed, Tricia thinks, in other countries. Where does AV actually operate and work effectively?
Well, it operates in Australia, and the Australians contrary to what the No campaign is saying, are perfectly happy with this system. Also, millions of people in this country use AV. We use it to select our leader. We use it to select our candidates, as do the other parties. If you're a member of a trade union or the student union, that's how you elect your president and your leaders of your unions. The Royal British Legion uses it. So there's lots and lots of organisations. And this idea that it's terribly complicated, I mean, I hope there aren't any Australians here, but if the Australians can get their head around it, then I think we can too. And you know,
there are Australia. We're on the web.
The idea that it's complicated. The idea that it's complicated to go 1, 2, 3. I mean, I think we're capable of doing that. We already do it in many ways, and it's popular where it works.
OK, so Mr. Blunkett, it works in Australia. It hasn't failed in other countries.
It hardly works in Australia. They are held to account at the moment by 2 independents and a couple of farmers, and that is determining the nature of the government, and they even had one candidate elected as the anti-gambling candidate. Now, you can't run a country on somebody being elected on a one-horse ticket. You've got to elect a government, and it's got to be removable. And I think that the simple, straightforward system is, if you get the majority of the votes in a constituency with a single MP, you get elected. You know who to get rid of, and actually, you also know who you want to elect. And after all, in Brighton, in May last year, the Greens did manage to get an MP because at last they managed to persuade enough of the electorate in that constituency in Brighton to elect Caroline Lucas. That's fine with me, but I don't see why we should be lumbered with them when they're down at 3rd or 4th or 5th preference and somebody's got a 2nd and 3rd vote.
Right, well, Elliot's sighing beside me, but I want to stay on your side because this is that constituency, Charlotte, is something you know a bit about.
I do happen to know a bit about it because I was standing against Caroline Lucas, and all I can say is, you know, she won fair and square. She didn't win by the 3rd and 4th preferences of the small parties. But I want to go back to what Ben was saying, because he mentioned Australia. Should we just talk about, there's just 2 other countries that use it, Papua New Guinea and Fiji. And when you talk to people who use the alternative vote, they say, right, well, I've picked 1 for the top, I put 1 for the bottom, and I fill in the rest. That's what they do in Australia. This is a how to vote card from Australia. They have to tell people how to vote.
What's wrong with that?
And each political party. Do we want to see this? You know, this is not democracy.
Okay, right. Well, I want to hear from Katie. I mean, you know, is it wrong educating people if you change the voting system and teaching them how to vote?
In Australia, voting is compulsory, so it's a completely different system. We're not anywhere near having compulsory voting here.
Do you think it should be?
I don't actually know what I think about compulsory voting. Some people say that for people with the kind of quieter voices in the society and less money and less advantages, compulsory voting is good because they're more likely to get them there. I don't know, I'm open-minded about it, but the fact is, for this debate, when we look at Australia, they have compulsory voting, alternative vote. When Australians were asked recently what they would like to move towards, they said they'd like the optional preference voting system, in other words, the alternative vote that we're about to adopt. And also when the Australians are asked about the health of their democracy, they're a lot more positive about it than we are.
Okay, now I'm going to get some more questions from the floor because we've got so many hands up here. Elliot, you can weave that into your, we'll talk to you next, but let's hear some more voices from the floor. Now, I promised you there on the end, you will be next.
Is it on? Hi. I don't know whether I'm for or against the AV vote yet, but what I do know is that in the last election there was a very low turnout. So should the government be spending their energy on educating and encouraging more people to vote so there is a larger proportion of people voting, so the voting system will be more fair.
More representative. I mean, it's very pertinent because the whole point about AV, exactly, we're trying to get people involved in democracy and trying to entice them in a way and saying, you will have more say, this will be more representative. Do you think it could change turnout, AV, Ben Bradshaw?
I think you make a really good point. And if you look at turnouts around the world, the countries that have the lowest turnouts, like Britain and the United States, are countries that have first past the post. And the reason for that is the one that was just mentioned earlier, is that if you live in a safe seat and you don't vote for the candidate who wins, your vote never counts for anything. So what's the motivation if you are a Labour supporter who lives in rural Hampshire that's always been Tory, you go out and vote in every election, your vote never counts, or if you're a Tory supporter in Labour Glasgow and the Tory doesn't have a chance. At least under AV, your vote counts. There's no wasted votes, and I think that will help turnout.
I want to bring in Dominic Moffitt here. I mean, I think everyone on the no side agrees. I think we all agree, don't we, that we'd like to see greater turnout in general elections, people using their democratic rights that have been fought so hard for over the years and the generations. I mean, if a byproduct of a yes to AV were that, would you be convinced? Would you be won over?
That won't be the byproduct of an AV vote. Actually, when I've gone to CLPs and meetings and spoken to old people, they've said that they will be too confused by AV to want to vote, and they'll put one preference, and then actually their vote can be entirely removed from the system. You talk about wasted votes. In first past the post, you just make your preference. You say, this person's the best candidate. That's the choice. Under AV, votes can be removed if your preferences are exhausted on the ballot. So wasted votes exist in AV, but not in first past the post. And insisting that an MP needs to get over 50% of the constituencies to support them to represent them would actually say that then 49% aren't represented by the MP, whereas under first past the post, an MP represents everybody in the constituency, whether they didn't vote, whether they voted against them, and whether they voted for them.
Okay, I'm going to take some more questions. Okay, Elliot, I've cut you off twice now, so go on then. Okay.
Well, that's interesting because under first past the post, there is a situation where 65% of the people in an area voted against the MP. He does not represent his constituents. That happened to a Liberal Democrat, incidentally enough. And I'd just like to come up on the idea of where AV is used. I'd just like to have a quote here from a place where AV is used. The alternative vote is working communities across the country, including San Francisco and Burlington, and has tremendous potential to democratize our politics. The Capital Times from Wisconsin in America. The alternative vote elects candidates who have majority support, accommodates voters having better choices, encourages winning candidates to reach out. Fair vote, the campaign for AV in the United States of America.
Okay.
There are hundreds of people in the United States who want to adopt AV because they know first past the post doesn't work for them.
Well, they do in Wisconsin. Right, we're going to take...
In San Francisco.
Okay, all right. That's Arkansas. We're going to take some questions together now because we're running out of time because there's so many hands up. Right, whoever's got the microphone, stand up. We'll hear from you.
Have you perhaps considered that the safe seats are where the majority of people would like, say you've got a Tory safe seat, have you perhaps considered that maybe the majority of people in that constituency would like a Conservative MP and nothing much changes because people don't move in and out?
Very simple question. Yeah, well, we'll let them consider it. Let's take some more from the floor because otherwise we won't hear from you. Could we get, well, you could have passed the microphone to, who's got the microphone now? There's two of them out there. Right, we'll hear from you, young lady.
Right, I feel that AV will make just a lukewarm government that holds no strong views because people are not educated about the views of the smaller parties and will simply resort to taking the middle ground rather than voting for the parties with polar views to their own.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to divvy these questions up when we hear some more. Let's have one more from whoever is closest to. Who's got a microphone? That's how you're selected. Right, hand that one over there. I'll hear from you next. Cool. There.
Hi, my name's Anib. don't you think that by introducing the AV system, you're going to give small extreme parties like the BNP a bigger majority?
Yeah, I mean, yes, okay. Deal with that, Ben Bradshaw. I mean, it's inevitable, isn't it? They're a small party.
You know, no, AV is the best insurance policy against extreme parties, because the BNP would never get 50% of the vote, and the BNP are supporting the No campaign. That's why every sensible person in this room should be supporting AV. The BNP want first past the post.
Right, okay.
And Operation Black Vote are supporting our Yes campaign. Go and check on the website. The Muslim Council of Britain are supporting AV because they know AV is the best insurance policy against the BNP and other extremists.
I mean, David Blunkett, I mean, you've worked tirelessly against parties like the BNP.
Yeah,
what would this benefit?
Well, we in Yorkshire have to put up with both a nutcase of a BNP European Member of Parliament and a United Kingdom Independence Party nutter in Yorkshire as well, and that's entirely on AV. The BNP candidate got 6%.
Some proportional representation.
It is. It's a ticking the list. It's by ticking the list. He got 6% of the vote and got elected, and that's what you described earlier. Is what you'd really like down the line.
It's what you said you would like to get towards.
That's what you'd like. That's what you said you'd like.
Okay. It's not first past the post. Okay, so but you're making a clear distinction there.
Yes. Yeah. The BNP is opposing lock, stock and barrel the alternative vote. Why? They know it's the first past the post that allows them to slip in the back door with local councils on a low turnout. All we need to know is the BNP is against the alternative vote.
Okay. Charlotte, sorry.
The point about the BNP is a very important one. We must make light of it. One person's normal vote is another person's extremism. What happens under the alternative vote is that people can vote for smaller parties and
second preference. Now, as a candidate under the alternative vote, and this goes back to the point you made about lukewarm government, lukewarm candidates, what would you do? You would promise everything to everybody. So in order to get the second preferences of the BNP voter, no, I'm not saying they're more likely to get the seat, but I might have to pander to them a little bit to get this. Do we think? You have to have candidates who are lukewarm, who are please all, who promise everything, who deliver nothing. And in my days of knocking on doors, that is not what I hear from
people want from their politicians. They want honesty. And so the BNP
address on the yes side the issue of safe seats, because it's a very good point. There might be safe seats because the majority of people want them to be Conservative, Labour or Lib Dem.
One of the reasons I'm a member of the Green Party is because the three main parties are essentially identical. That is lukewarm politics. The Liberal Democrats have given up their policy on free education. The Labour Party do not support free education. The Conservative... That is why I'm a member of the Green Party, because we have lukewarm politics. Well, I am. About pandering to the BNP.
You've asked a question, haven't you, already? But your hand is just up there resolutely. So you want to come back on something? Let's hear from you.
I was going to talk about BNP.
Okay. Can we just this young woman here, 2-3 rows up?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I don't have a particular view on whether AV should be accepted or not, and I don't know whether there's been any statistics taken, whether people are actually going to go to this referendum. But you were talking about the low turnouts, and if there's already low turnouts, doesn't that mean there's going to be low turnouts for the referendum, which means that it could kind of be a publicity stunt, which means that people won't actually vote yes or no for the referendum, so whatever decision is based is going to affect everyone, because technically not many people are going to vote anyway. That's
you've thought it through. Yes, what happens? Well, Elliot, what happens if the referendum itself, we end up with a very, very low turnout?
That would be...
Does it have a mandate? Does it have a proper mandate?
No. Well,
even if you get the yes.
Why the activists Yes Fair Votes campaign like me are going all over the country. From Aberdeen, from Cornwall to Aberdeen, we have groups all over the country getting out there to get people to turn out to vote, because it's one of the most important referendums in our history on changing the way we vote. It's the second national referendum in British history. And my economics teacher mentioned it in his economics class. He said this is going to have a potentially massive impact on the way we do politics in this country, and that's why I think it's so important. That's a high turnout, because it's so important.
Dominic, what do you think about that? I mean, on the doorsteps, do you think people are fired up about it? Do you find that people even know very much about it?
People don't know about AV. People aren't fired up about it. That's because it's absolutely the worst change imaginable. It's just boring and nobody wants it. We're campaigning against it because it's a ridiculous way to go.
Because it's an excellent system.
No one, even the director of the Yes to AV campaign says it's not a good system. She was against it until a short period of time ago. Same for the Electoral Reform Society, who have only just changed their mind about it. Now they might stand to gain a certain amount of money.
But why did Labour vote against putting proportional representation on the ballot? Why did they vote against that if AV is so bad and not good enough?
Okay,
they voted against.
All right, thank you very much. Right,
those candidates.
Let
those candidates in marginal seats. Those candidates in marginal seats who campaigned the hardest, and it's those candidates who are penalised by AV.
Okay, right. So. Division of views there, as we might expect there. Now I want to hear some more views from the floor. Somebody's got the microphone there. Hello.
This is more directed towards those supporting first past the post. I think it's, the issue is that most politicians don't really have to get out of bed during campaign time to go to knock on people's doors, because they know in safe seats they're guaranteed that vote. And I don't think most people understand that their vote counts for nothing. So I'm not supporting AV because for me it's not really that crucial to me, because I'm trying to get through my A-levels. But, but do you think moving towards reform of the electoral system will be more edged not towards changing first past the post or going towards AV, but exciting the political participation of the electorate that the campaigners have to get out of bed and try and appeal to me who's going to vote.
It's a good question, and it relates to what we were discussing. I'll just take Charlotte on this one, because it also relates to the idea, the potent argument from the Yes campaign, that it makes our representatives work harder for us.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. I was on Twitter yesterday, because I spend quite a lot of time on Twitter, I'm afraid. And Kerry McCarthy, I know it's sad. Kerry McCarthy, who's an MP, a Labour MP actually, she's actually in favour of the alternative vote, and she saw the leaflet that arrived at her desk saying it will make MPs work harder. And she was appalled, because you know what? She works really, really hard already. But the point about this is, to make our MPs work harder, it's not the voting system that's the problem. We need powers of recall, we need accountability, we need transparency, we need lots of things. Changing to the alternative vote makes no difference. It's a fatuous argument, and I can't believe they've got the audacity to put it on leaflets and hand it out.
Okay, well, let's just ask...
we need to keep citizenship in the curriculum, which is threatened at the moment, so that young people know more about politics where power lies and exercise the vote. People know more about politics where power lies and exercise the vote. And in 1997, we swept away Conservatives who'd been in safe seats for decades. And the danger this time was that they were going to do the same to us, but they didn't.
Okay,
and there were massive swings.
Okay, that's enough from you. On the Yes side, I mean, Ben Bradshaw, I don't believe you could work any harder. We all know how hard you work for your constituents. I mean, but you're arguing that you should, and AV will make you do so.
Well, it's very kind of you to say so, Dermot, but I have a marginal seat, and that's one of the reasons I work hard, and the point that the questioner made is absolutely right.
So no need for AV then?
Yeah. No, because if you live in 2/3 of seats under first past the post are safe, and therefore you sit in them for life. You can be lazy, incompetent, you can even be corrupt, as we've seen MPs go to jail. AV will make them work harder, because they'll have to get more than 50% support in their seat. They'll have to reach out to beyond their own party supporters to a much broader section. And I think that will keep people on their toes. It'll mean less laziness, less corruption, and less incompetence. And it'll mean a better sort of politics.
Okay, well, I'm getting so much muttering and spluttering here. I'm just going to have to hear from Dominic very quickly on that.
Australia has twice as many safe seats as Britain. That's a system that uses AV. Clearly, it doesn't get rid of safe seats, and I don't know where I was in the election working with Emily Thornberry. There was a massive... We were out working all night for the week running up to the election, and for every evening before that for months. Every vote...
Were you actually out all night?
Almost all night.
Goodness gracious. That was an exciting election.
Yeah, losing voters there.
No, we weren't losing voters, and we won. But under AV, Emily Thornberry can't win, even if a quarter of Conservatives vote for her, which they'd never do. The Liberal Democrats sneak it in because it's a system that favours them.
I've overlooked this gentleman so often now. We've got to hear from him.
My name is Angel, and I want to ask David Blunkett. You said you don't like coalitions, so my question is, why are you not in favour of AV, as I think that will restore the single-party politics here.
Well, I'm not in favour of anything that fudges the decision of the electorate between the two major parties in electing a government and, above all, the ability to get rid of a government. And the danger with any form of proportionality, including AV, is that you fudge that and they do a deal afterwards. And although this happened last May under our existing system, I don't want this to happen over and over and over again, because they fixed the decisions after the election, and you know what the consequence of that was, with education maintenance allowance, tripling fees,
all right, well, yeah.
all the things that we didn't want.
Katie, we haven't heard from you on that. I mean, you know, just on this issue, would it give us almost permanent coalitions if we had AV? And if it did, if you accept that, would that be a good thing?
But there's not a scrap of evidence that changing the voting rules to the alternative vote would lead to more coalitions. Unless you've been in hibernation for the last year, you'll have noticed, as David Blunkett has said, that we have a coalition government that came out of the first past the post system. The reason is that we are moving, as voters, away from voting for the two big parties. That's something which is happening anyway, and I just think we need a voting system that can reflect our views.
Okay, thank you for keeping that short. Now listen, we are really running out of time. You can't come back in, Elliot. We're going to hear from you in a minute or two. I want to hear from those hands that are raised. We might not get responses to them, but let's make these contributions to the debate. Can we get microphones? So there's a cluster of 3 hands there in the corner. Very, very quickly, if you will, please.
My name is Nahid Mia, and you see the FPTP, it has a lot of wasted votes, and similarly, the AV will create a lot of indirect votes going to different candidates. Don't you think this is undemocratic? As a voter, I don't think that my second choice will be relevant to me, because I really want my first choice to come out.
Okay,
second choice.
Right, there we are. Right, strong.
Thank you.
And there's some support there, I think, in the corner. Can you give that microphone to the hand up behind you, please? And let's just hear from you.
AV is not really democratic, because the winning candidate does not necessarily win with a majority of first preference votes. Won't this lead to the tyranny of the majority?
Okay, well, leaving that as a thought, we have come. I'm going to take one last question from this side, or statement. We're getting a microphone to you as quickly as we can. You can pass that down the row, please. And as I say, we have to be off the air at 4, so let's just hear this as a statement.
Under the AV system, after the votes are redistributed, the second preference gets the same weighting as the first preference. But surely, if it's your second preference, then why would it have the same weighting as the first preference? That makes no sense.
Okay, we'll let that hang. Okay, right. As I say, we are reaching the conclusion of the debate. To conclude it, I'm going to allow each of our panellists to make a 60-second statement of why they either support or oppose the introduction of the alternative vote. I will start with the Yes campaign and Elliot.
Okay. This referendum matters to me because it's the second referendum in British national history, and it will determine the shape of our politics for decades to come, because it's a referendum on changing the way we do politics. And it matters to me because it's a chance for political reform, and it's not the first chance for it. And AV is no way new to political reform. 100 years ago, we lost the chance for AV when the House of Lords voted against it. And then in the 1930s, there was another chance to have AV, but the national government fell before we could introduce it. And then in the 1970s, another chance for political reform was lost when the government fell again. And then in 1997, there was a referendum pledged on our voting system, but it never came. We have another chance to do that in 2011, whichever system we all prefer. I know that many people I know prefer a different system, but chances like this to change the way we do politics come only once every generation.
Okay.
And in 20 years, students will look back on this referendum and decide whether we bottled it or we took this chance for reform, something that doesn't come very often.
Okay, time's up. Well done.
Just say yes.
Just over 60 seconds, right? Keep the clapping down, please. We haven't got much time. Dominic, your minute starts now.
AV is expensive, it's unfair, and it's Nick Clegg's reform. It's also complicated. It's a system that puts the Liberal Democrats in a position to decide the government every single election. We'll have an almost permanent coalition, as they have in Australia. The opposition party is currently known as the Coalition. It's expensive. There are lots of different ways it's expensive. And it's unfair because why should my 8th preference be given the same weighting as your first preference? Why should the MPs who work the hardest on the periphery, in the marginals, be penalised by a system which favours sort of an insurgency, a really negative campaign?
5 seconds. A
campaign that is voting against. A campaign that just says no to the incumbent.
Okay, that's it, encapsulated no. Right, thank you very much indeed. Katie. Right,
that happens on the first past the post all the time.
Katie.
Let's just remind us it's a small and simple change that will make a big difference. It's replacing the X with 1, 2, 3. That's pretty simple. You pick a winner. It's only if they don't win that your other preferences, your second or third preferences, will come into account. I've always cared about people having a say, perhaps because in all the jobs I've done, I've worked with people with the quieter voices, asylum seekers, older people, younger people, people with mental health problems. And that's why I care so much about an outdated system being put to rest and replacing it with a system which gives us a choice and a bigger say. If you don't mind that MPs are mostly elected, though most of us didn't vote for them, and ignore your concerns, then vote no. But if you want more choice and a bigger say over who gets a job in Parliament, and politicians who spend less time squabbling with each other and more time listening to your concerns, then vote yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Charlotte?
Thanks very much. Most of all, I want to thank you guys for making this the best AV debate I have done so far. It's been brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll take that as part of my time, because the point is, it is about the voters, it is about the people. The alternative vote is an unfair system. The voters of the small parties get several bites of the cherry as their votes, their choices are rolled up. You also have the alternative vote, which kicks out some votes. People are disenfranchised as they don't make enough preferences. As the gentleman said over there, it treats some people's first choices the same as other people's 5th choices. How can that possibly be fair? And the other thing is, it counts some people's second choices, but not everybody's, remember. It is a deeply flawed system, and I urge you to vote no.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm cutting the politicians down to 30 seconds is all we've got. Ben Bradshaw, 30 seconds.
If you think the current system is perfect, vote no. If you want a better system, a more modern system that's fairer, makes MPs more accountable, vote yes. And I have a question for David Blunkett. Why won't the No campaign publish their donors? We have. Who is funding their campaign?
Thank you. Thank you for keeping to the time.
I'm very happy for the No campaign to publish their donors. Confidence in politics is about politicians really saying what they mean and meaning it. Not like one of the great campaigners for the AV, the Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, who on the 22nd of April last year called this a miserable little compromise. Like everything else, he's changed his mind. That is what disillusions young and old alike in politics. Vote to keep the existing system, but above all, get involved in politics.
Okay, and there we end the debate. Thank you very much indeed to our panellists. Thank you very much indeed to Ben Bradshaw, Katie Ghose, Elliot Folan, David Blunkett, Charlotte Vere and Dominic Moffitt. Round of applause, please. Thank you.
Okay, guys, one more round of applause for the panel, please.